Hi, Jason. Great post. I just wanted to touch on something that you had mentioned in your post, and you mentioned this idea of how we see ourselves internationally and how we perceive ourselves versus how others perceive us. And I just wanted to comment on this and add to it in comparison to globalization for this week. And globalization, this plays a role in globalization and how in the transitional period, because of how we perceived ourselves has probably changed our influence in globalization, and how the global economy has changed for us, because in my opinion we have probably perceived ourselves as having little dominance as far as capitalism prior to the transitional period, to have a great influence during the transitional period, during the Cold War, and after this transitional period, because of this growing economic phenomenon that Snow had mentioned in the chapter for the week, which took place in between 1980 and 1990. So I just think that we perceived ourselves as having little influence to having greater influence during the transitional period as far as globalization, to have this great amount of influence as far as capitalism and the global economy and globalization. However, others probably perceive us as having little influence, or not as much influence as we perceive ourselves as having, because they want to see their economies as having a great influence as well, which also creates this economic competition that we have as far as globalization. And then one example I could think of this as how the others perceive us as is the way the Middle East may have perceived them, the way countries in the Middle East may have perceived themselves as far as the global economy, because they may have believed that they had this huge influence on globalization because of a large amount of control they had on oil prices and currently have on oil prices. The Snow chapter mentioned, and I mentioned this in my post, this idea of this global shock in 1973 and 1977 with this huge rise in oil prices and the economic competition that resulted from these rise in oil prices. So therefore, the Middle East countries probably perceived themselves as having this huge influence on the global economy, as well as we probably see them as not having a great amount of influence in the global economy, and us having this huge influence on global economy because of capitalism and how much involvement we have in the global economy. And I just thought this was important. The way we perceive ourselves and the way others perceive us as far as globalization is important, because I definitely believe it plays a role in how do I say this? Plays a role in this dominance and what role we actually play in, or how big our role is as far as globalization and other countries and globalization. So I definitely think the point that you mentioned about perceiving ourselves and perceiving others was definitely important for this idea of globalization. So I really enjoyed your post and can't wait to hear your feedback. Thanks.